In discussions on paganism, you often hear the terms UPG, VPG, and maybe even SPG. So what do these terms mean? A lot of pagan movements today are trying to recapture the shamanism of our ancestors. One of the skills of the shaman is to be able to walk between the worlds, visit the other world, and bring back knowledge. Wisdom gained in such a manner was sought for healing, for planning, and for the future of the tribe. Today, what we call shamanism is a practice that was widespread throughout many cultures and animistic societies throughout history all over the world. Each tribe and culture had a different word for it, but regardless of what it was called, the shamans or seers of the tribe were considered the wise sages who sought information in the other realms for the benefit of all. As we recapture the tools and techniques of shamanism for a new age, there are those who seek wisdom, but there's also the occasional charlatan who seeks to benefit from the practice of shamanism for their own ends. So how do we know that the knowledge modern-day shamans are bringing back is accurate? And how do we know they're not trying to con us for material gain? In other words, how do we know their information can be trusted? That's where the terms UPG and VPG come in. UPG stands for Unverified Personal Gnosis. The word gnosis comes from the Greek word for knowledge. Unverified personal gnosis is therefore a personal experience or knowledge that has not been verified by history, facts, evidence, or the experiences of others. A UPG experience might hold great meaning for the person who had it, but unless it's verified in some way, it has to remain UPG for anybody else concerned. For example, if someone comes to me and tells me that they went on a shamanic journey and met Odin, and Odin demanded that I give him all my money, I'm going to need some independent verification before I can act on this person's word. VPG, on the other hand, stands for Verified Personal Gnosis. VPG experiences are those that a person may have had that have been verified by history, archaeology, facts, evidence, or by the experiences of others. Just to give you an example, I first discovered Druidry in 1978. Back then, we began experimenting with trying to recapture Celtic shamanism. This work got into more depth in the early 1980s. In those times, there weren't a lot of other Druid organizations, but as time progressed, more and more people became interested in recapturing Celtic shamanism, and we started encountering people who were engaged in the same sort of experimentation we were trying ourselves. What was interesting to me, and a confirmation of what we were doing, is that they were getting many of the same messages that we were getting in their own journeys in the other world. The most common and most significant message we were all receiving is that there was a great change coming, and that people all over the world would rediscover their ancestral roots and recapture the worldwide practices of shamanism and animism. The message was that indigenous spirituality from nations and ethnicities around the world would undergo a great rebirth. We were also told that we would focus more on what we had in common than on our differences as we encountered other shamanic practices throughout the world. The further back in time we looked, the more commonalities we found among all these practices. This common ground, shared experience would lead to the birth of a new global tribe with many manifestations, but with the same heart and the same spirit. We started hearing these messages in the early 1980s, and you can look around the pagan world now and see that a lot of this has come to pass. In other words, paganism and other forms of indigenous spirituality all around the world have revived and grown, and have been rekindled. These shamanic experiences were a shared vision from the other world. Many of the people that we were talking to and that we were associating with had all had similar visions. They weren't just a question of one person's experience, as many people from many places were sharing a similar vision. Elements of this vision were also later verified by archaeology and other discoveries. Since other people had had similar experiences and could verify for themselves what we had been seeing and hearing, these experiences became VPG, Verified Personal Gnosis. And because these events were also shared among people from various locations at different times, with no prior knowledge of what the others were doing, They were also SPG events, or shared personal gnosis events. They were personal because the messages were geared towards individuals receiving them, but they were also shared because the knowledge contained in the messages was similar and in some cases identical. So what does all this mean? In any organization that promotes and seeks interaction with alternate realms of existence, there's always a thin line to walk between the people bringing back actual knowledge from other realms and from people being deceived by hucksters and would-be cult leaders. In the case of these con artists, they insist on the followers taking up their UPG as law, while in the case of actual messages from beyond, they tend to have ways to be verified independently. So verified personal gnosis is a way to ask for and seek confirmation that otherworld experiences and visions are true and valid. By seeking confirmation, we minimize the danger of being deceived. That's why I always teach my students to seek to verify any experiences before acting on them. When we do so, unverified personal gnosis becomes verified personal gnosis, and verified personal gnosis helps us to grow. When we don't verify for ourselves, we leave ourselves open to becoming victims of tricksters.